Easily, at least a dozen of the cities of our country continue to be among the most polluted places on the planet. Breathing in that environment is equivalent to anywhere between smoking 15 to 50 plus cigarettes in a single day. Now, when things like these are reported, how would you break it down?
Is make me think a little that how journalism, in particularly environmental and health journalism, has evolved in India. The first of the problem is when you smoke that air, it is extremely unhealthy. Cigarettes have nicotine. Where are you going to find nicotine? Who is crazy enough to burn nicotine? Farms and farms of nicotine to equivalently compensate for cigarettes. Cigarette comparison logically do not work. So my idea would be always on the middle ground that development must go on because we survive because of development.
Namaste and welcome. I am Swareena Singh, and this is the Global Order. Today, we are in conversation with Dr. Abhiroop Chowdhury, Professor and Dean at the Jindal School of Environment and Sustainability, of which he is also a founding faculty member. A scientist by training, Sir has toured across India to study and research delicate ecosystems across rivers, mines, and mangroves. Welcome, Professor Abhiroop. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Swareena.
I would like to start with the most infamous yet prolonged debate about environment versus development. To put it into context, India aims to be the developed economy by 2047, yet easily at least a dozen of the cities of our country continue to be among the most polluted places on the planet, including our capital city, which has held a consistent record of being the most polluted capital city in the world for the last few years. Now, in your opinion, when there are such competing arguments of environment versus development, which side of the debate does this put on and how do we tackle this?
First of all, we have to go back to the history. I always believe that the intricacies of many problems lies in the historical facts. If I go back in time, I will see that since industrial revolution, many cities, even in the places that we count now as a developed nations, like particularly in the global north, also used to be one of the most polluted. Let me give an example. That even the definition of smog comes from the long time back during the time of industrial revolution when the cities such as Manchester, Leeds, and London used to suffocate from the classical smog, which is kind of a hybrid term including smoke and the fog. So it can only happen when there is a lot of industrial pollutant coming into the system. So first of all, we need to understand the debate from the perspective that this is not new or unique to countries such as ourselves or global south or developing nations. It is not unique. The world has seen this many times back because during the historical past, the industrial fulcrum lies in the European Union, which is now the European Union. During that time, it was the countries such as England, Germany, and to certain extent also in France and Spain. In these areas, the industrial growth started. And during those time, even those countries, their cities suffered from the same problem that India is suffering now. So what has changed? According to me, what has changed is the fulcrum of development is now shifted. It is now not centered only in the global north. So it is shifting towards other parts of the world, particularly in Asia. The greatest economies of the world now lies in the Asia, the growing economies, the economies that are supposed to surpass even the predecessors or the previous leaders in the economic growth. Though, so the Asian economies are going to rise. Whenever we have a development, definitely there will be a footprint. There will be a footprint on the nature. There will be footprint on the resources. There will be footprint on the human health. And these footprints are normal. It always are there. It is not entirely new. Yes, we have to be cognizant of the fact that how the development can work alongside understanding to solution to environmental problems, but not to that extent that the developmental wheels are slowed down. So we have to find a middle path, which is difficult. but it needs to be done. In the history, human is known to do some extraordinary stuff, extraordinary achievements, which transcends even the imaginations. Long time back in the medieval past, we nobody even imagined that the human can go into space. We can go travel into the unexplored depths of oceans. It is only possible in some science fiction stories of Jules Verne. There are so many submarines that are going into the sea. That is how extraordinary human development is. But if the development was not there, will we be sitting today and discussing about the problem of environmental degradation? Even the environmental degradations are mapped using the technological advances that human has done till date. So, if I would have this debate with you, Swareena, about 50 years back, there was no index available to say something is polluted because no development was there on that line. Now we have instruments that can help us to understand the levels of pollution, categorize pollution, and now I can list all these big nations, capital cities, developing cities into our order, which we call to be the most impacted by air pollution cities. But if I would have done the same exercise 100 years back, all the cities will be from Europe, correct? The indexes were not there. The developmental processes are not there during that time to understand the pollution at that level that we can do today. So, this advancement is also giving us an edge to understand the problem, not to stop the wheels of development, rather to change the process how the development is happening. It should be in a way where sustainable development objectives are taken into process. And we need to take these indexes, this different list of necessities which are most polluted as a process of understanding how we can find solutions. Not to blame that, okay, yes, all these kind of cities belong to a particular nation or to a few group of nations. No, these nations are developing. Same way, 100 years back, as Europe developed, and London used to be one of the places where people can't even see the moon and the stars because it was covered by smoke for about 50 years. That has happened. I can give you the example of post World War II Tokyo. The air pollution levels were extremely high during in Tokyo as well. Now it has gone down because they have thought of development, not stop the development. This thought of development, understanding the concept of sustainability. So if we can put sustainability into the process, these problems can be solved. And I am in the side of the debate. If now you told me to take a side, I will not take a side. The reason being very simple. When you take a side, you need data to support. Because I'm a scientist, I don't do anything without the data. I cannot say anything without the data support. So as we do not have a comparative process of the same indexes that we use now compared to what used to be the condition of the industrial era when Europe was industrializing, it is very difficult to compare the data. So my idea would be always on the middle ground that development must go on because we survive because of development. Even we can talk about the pollution because we know about development in the field of environmental chemistry and in the field of environmental technology. So that would not have happened if developmental wheels was stopped. Similarly, I believe that the answer lies in sustainable development. The answer is that siding the debate will not solve the issue. I may side a particular part of the debate saying that, okay, development should go on. That will impact the environment. I can say, no, development need to be stopped totally. Then we have to import all our goods from the other economies, which is not a very a good process, particularly in the recent geopolitical scenario. So we have to take a middle path here, according to my opinion. And that path should always be kind of following sustainable development goals.
Rightly said, Professor. I think it's impossible to pick one side on this debate with regards to development or environment because then we wouldn't be anywhere on the map. But at the same time, I think my inquiry is also coming from the side of the people, in the sense that one of the events that I think you are referring to could also be the Great Smog event of 1952 in London, where so many people
Right.
lost their lives. And today, if something like that was to happen, then it would shift into global north versus global south. But as for data, I remember reading that it has been reported that around 1.5 million deaths in India every year are caused due to air pollution. There have also been reports about how prolonged exposure to air pollution is impacting fetal growth, and it's leading to increased stillbirths. My question then shifts towards that: is there a imminent public health crisis that we might be ignoring? Because, like you said, we cannot pick a side. The answer lies in the middle path on going for a sustainable development model. But how real is the implementation of that, and what cost is the public paying for that? Because it's a morbid reality if you talk about the
Mhm.
kind of lives that are being lost, and even how desensitized to one point people have become, because there is not much in their control right now. I think from that perspective also I'd like to inquire.
Okay. Again, I will give my opinion, my take in this particular matter. First of all, I personally, as a scientist, do not take environmental journalism in India very seriously because, according to me, it is not till to that level of accuracy that we could follow that. First of all, that reason. Next problem is that whenever we look, I mean, all this data come from scientific researches, right, which is published in peer-reviewed journals. Now, if you go through this entire scripts in this articles, you will see there is always a methodological processes that has been followed, which has limitation. For example, you are asking me a very simple question: is death is related to air pollution, or whether it's going to increase the death rate? Now, my answer to that question is, it can never be a simple calculation. No paper can claim that because of air pollution only this many deaths will happen. They can say it can increase the chance, increase the comorbidities. Like, for example, somebody is exposed to a air pollution, say a vendor who is selling some food near to a very busy national highway, which sees a lot of traffic of, say, a non-point source air pollution. We call it non-point source because when vehicles move, it is very difficult to trace from which vehicle or from group of vehicle the pollution is coming from. So these are non-point source for air pollution sources. So the person is getting exposed to lot of huge amount of air pollutant. Now, because of air pollution, the person may not suffer from any disease, but it can add up to the problems that or the pre-existing condition that the person is having. For example, say the person may get lot of deposition of soot or unburned carbon in the alveoli of lungs, resulting into respiratory distress. So the disease is respiratory distress, which can be caused by air pollution. Yes, can also be caused by smoking, can also be caused by somebody staying with somebody who smokes in the next room, can also be caused by working in some industries where fibers are being developed, or any bond product is coming up. So whenever we are ideating on whether or trying to find a correlation, X and Y correlation, it's like because X, Y happened, we always have to understand that these variables are not always linked. There are a lot of extraneous variables that impact a particular health condition. But yes, from a scientific paradigm, from a opinion, again, it is my opinion, it is not a data kind, because most of the data is available in present in academic space. Again, I will mention, I don't rely on environmental news. I rely on published articles that are vetted by scientists who are eminent scientists. Most of these data are cohort studies. They take a group of people, they try to understand how a particular problem is impacting them. So it is limited to the cohort. It can be extrapolated to a bigger population. But if we look into the population dynamics of India, this sample size will be exorbitantly high, which I don't think yet it is possible to do that to that scale until we pull all the resources together, scientific resources together, and try to compute a model where we can put maximum number of respondents into this process. Otherwise, these are all sample-based studies. We cannot extrapolate the data. On an opinion side of it, Yes, I do believe that air pollution does impact human health. It is very simple fact. Again, I will take help of some biological facts. Long time back, evolutionary biology says that we have developed a lot of mechanism to safeguard ourselves from different pollutants, both from the food side of it or ingestion side of it. But our anatomy and physiology is not developed to that extent to withstand or kind of protect ourselves from air pollution. So what happens if there is a, say, a polluted water? It need to go through our digestive system. When it will be ingested in our digestive system, it is going to go through the hepatoportal vein, to liver, which will try to detoxify the pollutant that is there. Sometimes it is able to do that. In some cases, it is not able to do that. But in case of air pollution, we do not have a kind of a anatomy where we can segregate the pollutants out. The air directly goes to the lungs. It will be then going to travel throughout our body through circulatory system. So keeping this fact in mind and reiterating the point that there is rarely any work on human, because it's not possible to work on humans as of now in most of the countries that I know of. We can only say that yes, air pollution can increase the comorbidities, chances of somebody to get sick, particularly due to respiratory illnesses. It will increase the chance of it, really. It will. But we still have to rely or depend on the data, and this data should not be from a secondary source. This data should be because we are talking about diseases which have direct medical implications. So we need direct evidences from the particular group of people who can be representative of the entire population. If I take the example of a Delhi, the Delhi's population is huge. We cannot conclude by only taking a sample of even 10,000 people. It is less. Why? Because the population of Delhi goes in crores. 10,000 sample is almost negligible to 1 crore, right? So that's where we have limitation. So until reliable scientific data comes up, I will not comment on this particular point that this many people are going to die. Because very simply, I have seen this that whenever you publish something with a morbid title, like X% cancer rise in India in 1 year. People will read that because we are afraid. We are afraid about our health. We are concerned about our well-being. We are because our well-being is inherently linked with our family and extended population or community that we are from. So we get concerned and we sometimes believe in things which may not be scientifically very true.
Thank you so much for that detailed answer. I think one of the most important takebacks in that case that instead of simply relying on how journalism chooses to report headlines, it's important also to go back to the science and the methodology of how things are calculated. And I think that will take away from the unnecessary anxiety as well that is added thanks to the morbid way of reporting things. But at the same time, because you spoke about journalism and how things are calculated and the science behind it, I could not help but wonder later in the year when we go deep into the winters and there will be daily headlines about smog and pollution. Now, one very common thing that is being said for the past few years consistently is that breathing in that environment is equivalent to anywhere between smoking 15 to 50 plus cigarettes in a single day. Things like these are reported. How would you break it down? Is that, is that.
Well, very interesting. Whenever I read this kind of articles, is make me think a little that how journalism, in particularly environmental and health journalism, has evolved in India. Because the first of the problem is when you smoke that air, it is extremely unhealthy. I agree on that. But cigarettes have nicotine. Where are you going to find nicotine? Who is crazy enough to burn nicotine, farms and farms of nicotine to equivalently compensate for cigarettes? So cigarette comparison logically do not work, even if we don't go into the methodology part. So here, when you burn something, you get a lot of PM. We have a lot of parameters in air pollution. We have PM 2.5, particulate matter with a diameter of 2.5 microns. We have PM10. We have NOx, SOx, that is nitrogen oxide, different radicals of it. That's why X comes up. SOx, sulfur oxides, different kind of oxides. ozone, different secondary pollutants such as ozone or peroxyacetyl different kind of parameters are there. They are bad. In simple terms, we are not supposed to breathe this air. This is extremely bad. But again, it is oversimplification if I compare it with a cigarette. So over the in cigarette, one of the major problem in that is the nicotine present in the particular tobacco, and that smoke is going directly to the alveoli, getting transmitted. Nicotine is a addictive drug. It is a stimulant. According to the classification of drugs, it is a stimulant. So we cannot compare a smoke condition with a cigarette, which has a totally different kind of chemical composition. We cannot do that. It is not right. Whoever has reported that, even if it is backed by a published data, they may be considering only a part of the parameter, maybe PM 2.5. PM10. They are not taking the all the chemicals together. So that is a limitation of the study. But this do not divert from the fact that yes, air pollution is seriously bad for our health. And the kind of air pollution that we get in Delhi, particularly in the time of the winter, but I will not mention Delhi. Actually, it starts from central Ganges basin. It ends till Peshawar in Pakistan. If you look into a map, a GIS remote sensing map, during this period of time, you will see this kind of smog is kind of visible not only in Delhi, but also in the central part of Uttar Pradesh, still in our neighboring country of Pakistan, Lahore, Peshawar, regions of Punjab, such as Multan, all these areas are in this particular problem. Now, this does impact health, but we also have to remember that not entirely it is a human born problem scientifically. Why? Why am I saying that? The reason behind that is during that time, if you look into the geography of India, we go through a phase which is called inversion of temperature. What is inversion of temperature? Inversion of temperature is when the winter months comes up. So we have the high Himalayas. Himalayas make the air thinner and colder. Cold air start to congregate into an area and don't move, meaning the air movement become a kind of still, stagnant. Now, if any pollutant is put into that mix, that air is does not circulating that much as it used to circulate in the summertime, you will get a situation like such as smog. Now it depends on in the winter, you can also get the sunlight, which can change the chemical nature of the pollutant into something called photochemicals. But yes, so the inversion of the temperature plays a very important role. We have to understand a very simple point here. Why? And there is a very valid example, even without knowing much about environmental chemistry. I'll give that. Say, for example, it is not only Delhi or central part of or Uttar Pradesh, Noida, Ghaziabad, NCR region that is having industries. Other cities of India also have very equivalent or very similar population as well as industrialization. For example, say the city of Kolkata, city of Mumbai, city of Chennai. But they don't suffer from this issue. Why? Land breeze, sea breeze effect is there. Sea breeze pulls this pollution away. So it will not congregate in one place. The AQI will increase, but not in the level of Delhi. So environmental factor and geological and geographical factor also play a role in formation of this air pollution. So when we are going to look into it, instead of my suggestion will be instead of panicking and just relying on the title of environmental journalist, let's try to relax and take a deep breath and try to understand the rationale and the logic behind that, then it will be easier. Similarly, in a health condition, again, we can choose to kind of segregate ourselves from this particular smog, use different kind of filters. At least it will not going to filter away all the necessary harmful gases, but it can filter out PM 2.5 and PM10, which can make breathing better. But yes, the problem of pollution in the winters and this smog condition, it is a big problem which need to be solved through say socio-politico environmental processes. It cannot be done by only one discipline because one can ask a question that okay, India can take a very strong stance in clothing, and we have that. We have that processes that is enacted whenever the QI goes beyond a particular level. But sociology also play a very important role. Why? Because personally, if a family has more than one car, say a family of 5 or 6 have more than one car, which is a very normal process in parts of NCR, Punjab, then the number of vehicles are more. More number of vehicles mean more pollutant coming into the system. So that's why I will quote the our Honorable Prime Minister Narendra Modi's vision of Mission Life. It is very important because many of these problems' root is not actually much related to industrial pollution, but rather on a social habit change, which is required. And that can only happen by awareness and not to panic. Think about the problem with logical processes. That will give us idea that where the problem lies.
Absolutely. I think that is even more important in a world when at a time when we're alive where we're bombarded constantly by information. It's very, very important to go back to the sources of it and to really verify and understand what exactly is the issue at hand. That being said, however, and taking on from what you also said, it does not mean that air pollution should be ignored, and it cannot be
No.
discounted that there is a public health emergency at hand that needs to be paid attention to even more. Right? I would like to divert towards one of your areas of expertise about mangroves, that with climate change and global warming as sea levels are rising, it's known that mangroves function as a barrier in South Asia, mostly in against floods and tsunamis. But given the current state of our environment, can they really act as the first line of defense, or are the government still under investing in them? Where are we in that?
Actually, the story of mangrove is totally different. It is a positive story for environment. I mean, first of all, we have to understand that not all stories in environment end up in death. Not all stories in environment is actually morbid. We are doing wonderful things in certain parts. So when somebody talk about environment, we should also talk about the rise of forest cover in India. We have the largest number of wild tigers, which is not found anywhere else in the globe. It is the highest number we have in India, and that's only because of the wonderful conservation policies that India had implemented since independence till now. Then mangrove is another success story. Now, why am I calling it a success story? The reason behind that is, first of all, there is a proven document that says that the condition of mangrove restoration across the world is kind of going good. It is not the best. Lot need to be done. There are many mangroves are in threat, but the huge chunk of mangrove in India is not under threat. There is a IUCN report on mangrove that is published about a year back. The western coast mangroves, some part of it, yes, it is under threat, but the eastern coast mangrove, which is the maximum chunk of mangrove biodiversity, is actually in the eastern coast. That is fairly away from the threat, meaning the conservation is going well. Many states are taking lot of initiatives in mangrove restoration, and it is working quite successfully. Like for example, in not only the eastern states, like not only West Bengal is doing it. There is a particular incentive coming from the carbon credit markets as well, which government of India has implemented couple of year back or 1 year back. I think it has been implemented. So now planting mangrove not only is helping you to stop the furies of cyclone, and your answer to your question in one word is yes, mangrove can stop the initial furies of cyclones. We have done this. We have seen this. I myself is kind of involved in several mangrove restoration projects, and we have restored more than 300 hectares of degraded lands in Sundarbans, and all these areas receive less impact during the super cyclones. So it is a proven fact, and it is not only my work. There are many other work that proves that during time of any kind of typhoon, super cyclones, if there is a mangrove barrier, mangrove actually saves the population pool from disasters, and it is the first line of defense. We call it bioshield. Yes, it does that because that is exactly how the plants have evolved. If I go into botany, that is how why the plant has the power to congregate the soil through its extensive root system. So that's why it acts as a shield, and it does. And next point is, many state in India is taking it very seriously. I can keep on naming it. Like for example, Gujarat. Gujarat is planting huge mangrove across its coastline, and Gujarat has the highest, largest coastline in the of amongst all other states in India. It is the highest number coastline, and they are doing this quite successfully. I'm involved in some of the project that works in Kutch. I have my postdoc was in Kutch, so I do know that This is the fact that it, yes, they are doing it very successfully. Again, in the eastern coast, West Bengal, Orissa, Tamil Nadu, we have Andhra Pradesh, we have in the western coast, we have the Konkan coastlines, Gujarat, all the states are investing heavily on mangrove restoration. And mangrove restoration is kind of going well. I'll not say it is extremely successful because recreating anything, it takes time. But yes, it is going in a very positive direction for India. In many cases, Indian restorations have been quoted across the globe because our restoration models. I remember I have one of my publications in restoration, which has been highly cited for in different mangrove restoration projects across the globe. So our many methods are being used and being implemented in different other places. Similarly, we also get new restoration tips from other parts of the world, particularly Indonesia, Philippines. They use different kind of eco-engineering methods, which I think India will be benefited if we can use that in our place as well. So yes, it is quite a successful story.
Thank you so much for telling us what the actual picture on ground also looks like. It's important to know the positive side of it as well. One of the other things that I'm curious about, that there has been this debate and some criticism about how over the last few years, method of calculating the forest cover in India has slightly changed, or it has been tweaked, with regards to which plantations and natural forest covers are both seen under forest cover, because of which the forest cover has increased. But it may not be the case. And then there has been a debate on the fact that even though the government is cutting down trees in some places, it does plant it in other places. But can a rainforest be replaced by a deciduous forest or plantation? On questions like these from a scientist's perspective, how would you answer this criticism? How is it justified, or what is the answer to it?
Oh, well, it is a very interesting question. So I will answer it with my opinion. What I think about it. I have worked in several ecosystems for a long period of time. And my main education was botany, plant science. So let me try to break a myth. There is a myth that forest means, because whenever we open Discovery Channel and all, we see forest like somebody going dense into the Central African forest or Amazonian selvas, that is the Amazonian rainforest. So our idea, emotional romanticism of forest lies with the fact that is, according to classification, would be a rainforest. But the classification do not follow that way. Scientifically, everything has value. Like, for example, there are some very interesting birds that we find and biodiversity that we find in the western part of our India, in the mostly the arid zones, which are actually endangered and critically endangered and need to be conserved. So, forest is everything. Everything falls under the forest. There are several classifications, but the one that I can kind of relate to is something that I have studied during my undergraduation time, which is called Champion and Shade Classification System of 1968, which has a huge 16 major type of different forest system. All are forests, by the way, starting from tropical evergreen to tropical deciduous, tropical thorn, subtropical, temperate, alpine, mangroves. Everything falls under that classification. So logically, if we can keep our romanticism out, that forest only means that we have to enter into a very dense forest and there will be some very particularly flagship species such as tiger and lions, only that constitute for forest. That is scientifically not right. Forest, it follows a classification system. So that system has everything in it. Now I address your second question. That is whether tropical forest is changing into deciduous forest. India mostly have deciduous forest because forest type is kind of linked where, again, if you look into the forest map of India, not from now, from even from the previous time, like a British surveys as well, during the time before 1947, you will see that the classification is actually based on two factors. One is the soil type type. Another is the precipitation. Precipitation, in a very simple, non-jargonous term, is rainfall. The area that has more rainfall is prone to have species which can grow throughout the year, hence the term evergreen, meaning it can grow the entire period. But India's evergreen forests are always segregated into very, very small patches. Like, for example, in the northeastern part of India, you have evergreen forest. You have evergreen forest in the Western Ghats region, a part of it, very, very small part of it. Rest, most of the part of India, it is different kind of deciduous forest, which is seasonal growth will be seen.
Just is it even present in the Great Nicobar Islands?
Yes, Great Nicobar Island is a tropical forest type. Yes, it is a tropical forest. A tropical forest. But Great Nicobar Islands case is a little different. I mean, the debate is going in a way which, according to me, it should not be going in that direction. But anyways, let me come back to the classification part of it. So, in classification, everything is a forest. Now we have a tool which is generally very difficult to challenge. I will tell you why. It is a very simple fact. We take satellite imagery and not as a photo. We take satellite imagery as spectrum. Like, if we can see each other, that's because light is traveling and it is hitting our retina. We are getting a sensation in our brain, which is being processed in our optic lobe. Then our brain is processing the information. But this spectrum is only not limited only to the visible spectrum. It starts from ultraviolet, it ends in the IR. In between, you get the visible spectrum. Correct? Now, in satellite imagery system, we can actually take each of the spectrum separately. And green plants take certain amount of radiation or electromagnetic spectrum, reflect certain amount back, using atmospheric windows. I'll not go detail into it, otherwise it will be a environmental physics lesson class. I'm sure nobody would like that. So it will go back into the space and it will be taken up by satellite. Now we are using the satellite data to give us a very right accounting of how much forest cover is there in India. And these are mostly unrefutable because plant, whatever the species is, if there is a plant, it is a plant. We cannot say that in a plant, say sandalwood is more important than, say, a banyan tree, because sandalwood costs more in the market. Every species has equal value. Every species need to be conserved. So the definition of forest also is encompassing all of this. We cannot say that the forest cover is declining just because there is change in the condition of the rainforest. Rainforest condition is supposed to change. Long time back, historically, what was Sahara Desert? Any idea? Sahara Desert was a wetland. Can you believe it? Half of the Sahara Desert used to be a wetland. Now it is a desert. After some 10,000 years, it may be a fertile plain. Geographically and geologically, landscape keep on changing. According to that, the forest type will also change. The forest type that we generally use is that is given to us by Champion and Sale and followed after Champion and Sale. But yes, everything is a forest. Everything needs to be conserved.
Thank you for that answer. So, I am happy to know about that. And I think one of the things that you were talking about is the near infrared way of studying vegetation.
Right.
Right. So, important scientific points that need to be paid attention to, rightly said. But for the concluding question, what I would like to ask you both, as somebody who's living in India at a time when it is polluted on the journey of its development, as well as a scientist, is there any environmental risk that worries you most because it is not spoken about in the mainstream, something that you would like to talk about or bring into the attention?
Yes, interesting. Yes, I have actually something that is not spoken at all. That is geopolitics. I think the most greatest threat to environment is not industrialization or something else. It is only geopolitical situations. I'll give you an example. Like, say the recent whatever happened in the Middle East, and it has changed a lot of our economic policies. Economic policies need to be changed because we cannot rely on. We have to go into a middle path, a sustainable development path. Now, if the geopolitical scenarios keep on changing this fast, even when our country does have wonderful environment, India has one of the best environmental law ever made anywhere in the globe. I can safely say it is better than many other countries, even the developed countries. We have developed the Environmental Protection Act 1986. We have Forest Conservation Act, Wildlife Conservation Act. There are a lot of different acts that we have in India, which is one of the best. It has been quoted in many different countries across the globe. We have very good environmental laws. But the question is, with this kind of geopolitical tensions going on in different, or I will use the term geopolitical randomness happening everywhere, it will invariably going to impact the resource policy of the country. And now, if the resource, there is a direct kind of a relation between resources and environmental degradation. More resource extraction, more degradation will happen. The country have to protect itself. These are important because if you are not even alive, how are you going to even scream about environmental conservation? Correct? We can do so because we are not troubled by missiles dropping in our head every day. And we have to thank the government for that. That we are not in a situation where we have to rush down into a bunker every 5 or 10 minutes. So you have to give the government or the policymakers the option to keep this protection shield on us. If the shield is not there, and believe me, if there is a missile dropping every 10 minutes, I don't think maximum population of India would be concerned about what is happening, how many forests are getting destroyed. They'll be concerned about how they can save their own family. We can all debate on this because we are safe, but the safety comes with a cost, and definitely it has an environmental cost to it. But what to do? This is a demand of the geopolitical changes that is happening, and that is never being talked. We directly blame industries for pollution. Yes, they are. They should be blamed for certain kind of pollution. Yes, but the country is trying to get different processes to circumvent that. We work on compliances. We have ISO 14001 compliance systems. We have BRSR reporting frameworks. We have a carbon credit system that is at place. Industries who pollute also pays to plant new forests in different parts of the country. But the plantation, if the journalism focus on the plantation, nobody will going to read that. I mean, I am just putting the thing on me. I may not be that much interested to read that. But if I write, because of industries, 1.5 billion people are going to end up having cancer, for example, just random thought. People will be interested to read that. But there are policies in India that make our industry pay back whatever pollution they are doing. This is called pollutant pay principle that has been enacted in our processes, policy processes for a long period of time now. So they are these kinds of processes are there. But one thing that the country cannot train itself for, cannot protect itself, it is geopolitical changes. How can we predict what is happening in our neighboring country? How can we predict as an Indian? We have a wonderful policy. We are supposed to go carbon neutral by or net carbon zero by 2070. This is a plan, correct? But what happens if there is a geopolitical tension over the period of time, and or the government is also supposed to give employment to the growing population of the country? That is a tension we need to look at. That is what we need to do. That how environment is going to work along with the geopolitical tensions, and the impact of the geopolitical tension on the economics of the country.
Like you said, peace comes at a cost and so does development. And it is one thing to have the best laws in the world with regards to environment, completely different to implement it in a certain situation. Just like it's one side of a coin to have systems in place that are prepared to take on emergencies, but at the same time, the other side is also ensuring that the systems work when the time comes. But on that note, I think the final note would be that while humans are not completely in control of the environment, geography does come in as it will. But it is important to remember that we have accelerated certain processes that are
Surely.
leading to the degradation and the detriment of the environment at this point. But at the same time, I would really like to thank you for setting an optimistic tone to the discussion and also bringing our attention to the scientific side of it, which we do happen to miss out on given how dramatized the discussion becomes. So, thank you so much for that. I really do hope to
My
have you
pleasure.
back on global order
My
for the
pleasure.
next.
And I will end up thanking you as well. It is my absolute pleasure to talk to you about environment. I am optimistic in nature, and I think environmentalists need to be optimistic, because if we already accept that things are destroyed and things are only going to go worse, then why we are here? Why? What our role is going to be? Our role is to bring some positive change. That means we have to be optimistic. And I don't believe as and day and night exist together, only negative do not work. There must be some positives as well. So we have to look into the both the coins and take the best examples out of it to make our earth more livable, more better, and definitely I will use the term developed as well.
Absolutely. I think fear and pessimism then should only act as something that should make us aware. In not talking about everything in general, but specifically because today's discussion is about environment, then fear and our anxieties and our pessimism should be something that helps us become aware of the situation. But like you said, as a scientist, as somebody who works in the field, it is important to have that sense of optimism and hope that guides you through your work. Thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for this.
My pleasure. My pleasure.